There are a bunch of untranslated visual novels that have no translation on the horizon that I'm interested in reading, whether if it's if I finally decide to continue my Japanese studies or hope for an English translation. In this video, I'll go over 10 that particularly interest me. The first visual novel I'll talk about is Koisuru Kanojo no Bukyo na Butai, shortened to Koikano by Cube. The only Cube visual novels we have translated is Ninki Seiyu by Shirabune, and an unfortunately bad machine translation of Your Diary Plus by Hobbybox. As for why I'm interested in Koikano, I've always liked Cube's art style. I'm particularly interested in the childhood friend character who is a bit dependent on the MC. She was also a former actress, and I'm interested in seeing how that role will play in the story. This is the only visual novel on this list that I've actually started reading in Japanese for a bit, but there's so many English translated visual novels now it's hard to keep up. The next visual novel I'll talk about is Omoide Kakaete Ai no Koi, shortened to Aikoi by Hooksoft. Nekonyan is translated IXG-tel and is currently translating Melty Moment by the same company, so it's certainly possible for them to get this title sometime in the future. As for why I'm interested in this title, this is childhood friend moige central. All 5 heroines are childhood friends of the main protagonist, and apparently in the common route, there's a whole prologue section where you get to see the MC and the heroines interacting with each other as kids before the MC has to temporarily move away. Hooksoft also has great art, especially in their newer visual novels, and Aikoi definitely continues with that asset. The next visual novel I'll talk about is Boku no Hitori Senso, shortened to Bokusen by Akabe Soft 2. I'm definitely interested in this because it's by the same writer who wrote Sharan no Kuni and G-senjou no Mao, both with popular translations. Apparently, Bokusen isn't nearly as well liked as those two, but as long as it has a really similar psychological feel and well done setting like in Sharan and G-sen, I'm more than happy to at least give this title a shot. The art and character designs do look pretty good too. The next visual novel I'll talk about is Kiss Bell by Giga. As far as English translated Giga titles go, we only have Baldur Force and Baldur Sky, but Giga actually has a whole team dedicated to moige titles. There's a lot of moige titles with Kiss in the title by Giga I could apply to this list, but I chose Kiss Bell just because it was the first one I found out about. Giga moige definitely has some good art, which is definitely a reason why I was interested in it. As for Kiss Bell's story and characters themselves, all I know is that it relates to a Christmas club, and one of the main heroines being a childhood friend. The next visual novel I'll talk about is Hataraku Otaku no Renai Jijo, shortened to Hataota by Akabe Soft 3. None of the titles by this company currently have a translation. I really wish there were more adult-age visual novels that aren't just fully sex-based nuki and/or just have a bunch of random dark sex themes. Thankfully, Akabe Soft 3 has at least a few adult-age moe nuki it seems. Hataraku Otona no Renai Jijo 1 and 2, as well as Hataota. I picked Hataota in particular because of how apparently the main setting is an anime song bar, where the main character and a bunch of other heroines can talk about nerdy things like anime, manga, games, etc. Not sure how deep it is, probably isn't, and how much sex will be pushed down your throats, which will probably be a lot, but I'm hoping it's at least a fun enough read. Speaking of adult-age visual novels, the next one I'll talk about is Artemis Blue by Applique Imoto. None of their titles have an English translation, and sadly this particular branch closed in Japan in May of 2012. One thing I noticed is that most of the main characters are not only above 18, we actually have a few that are above 30, an extreme rarity, especially in what seems to be a story eroge. As far as what I can see about the story, it appears to be a coming-of-age drama in future Tokyo and relates to aviation and how far up you're able to fly. The next visual novel I'll talk about is Cocoro Function by Pulltop. The major notable translated Pulltop titles are If My Heart Had Wings and A Sky Full of Stars, though only one of the main writers worked on Miyazora and only did Corona and Orihime routes. Pulltop has some of my favorite visual novel moige art, and Cocoro Function continues that trend. As for the story and setting, I'm interested in a visual novel that actually uses futuristic technology in a modern age. It seems like virtual reality is a big part of the setting, which I'm interested to see. I'm just glad when you can tell the writer isn't a typical boomer and actually keeps up with the technology times. The next visual novel I'll talk about is Akeiro Kaikitan by Silkies Plus Wasabi. Sekai Project has translated Nanairo Reincarnation and Kimagure Temptation by the same company and writer. I haven't read Nanairo or Kimagure, but Akeiro Kaikitan's premise and character designs look most interesting to me. One of the first sentences of the VNDB description is 4 girls committed suicide one after another. That, along with a mystery tag and the main character apparently being cursed, this seems like a very interesting premise. Honestly, this title seems more interesting than the other two Sekai Project has translated, but I can see Sekai Project translate Akeiro eventually, but we'll see. The next visual novel I'll talk about is Uchiwa Mo Enki Dekinai, shortened to Enking by Sonora. None of the company's titles are currently translated, but apparently it's a sister company to Cube, who created Ninki Seiyu. This was a very recent release in Japan, and that the setting is based on a fictional eroge development company very much interested me. Many of the main heroines are adult age, the protagonist is an otaku, and a lot of the development stuff is supposedly pretty down to earth, with some technical explanations, so that seems like features that specifically appeal to me. The art doesn't look too bad either. The last visual novel, and the only fan disc on this list, is Tsujidou-san no Virgin Road by Minato Carnival. The original Tsujidou-san no Jun'ai Road was fan translated by Surezure Scans, but the translator had no interest in doing the fan discs, so he didn't really like the story of the original. The original Tsujidou wasn't quite Magikoi quality, but I still thought it was a fun slice-of-life visual novel, especially since it had a kinda unique delinquent-only setting and solid comedy. As far as heroine routes go, I'm mostly interested in Yoiko or Ryoko's route, since she was definitely my favorite of the delinquent characters in Tsujidou. While she was a minor character, I'm definitely excited to see more Ayumi, who was my personal favorite in that visual novel, and I assume I'll see her more in I After. And these are 10 untranslated visual novels I'm interested in reading eventually. Like I said, I might read them in Japanese, or I might just wait for an English translation, but I'm not sure yet. What are your guys' thoughts on these titles that I picked out? Also, what visual novel titles haven't had a translation announcement yet, but you're interested in reading or hoping to see a translation of? Feel free to leave a comment below with your input.